Hello, this is going to be a tutorial on how to do the genetics practice game on Horse Eden eventing. I will be going through and doing a live example with my today's pair. Here we have a buckskin pearl splash white frame sire and a liver chestnut dam. As you see here, there is 576 possible genetic combinations for these two horses, and I will be going through and showing you all 576 of the combinations. Now, I have and will be posting this video both on here, on YouTube, and I will be putting a link in my current guide that I have up on the website. In that guide, I have gone over all of the genes and their possible alleles, and I'll go over that again in this video. And I also gave a written walkthrough of what I do, but I decided that making a video might be a little bit easier to show what I do and how I do it. So if you're looking at this video for tips on how to play this game, keep on watching, and I'll show you how I play the genetics game on Horse Eden eventing. So, first and foremost, much like my written version of this guide, I will be going over each gene and their possible alleles. So our first gene that we can have in the list of genes that we will be going over is extension. Now, extension is shown through two different alleles. The dominant allele, which is shown with a capital E, and the recessive allele, which is shown with a lowercase e. So this means that our possible outcomes for gene sets are homozygous dominant, which is two capital E's, homozygous recessive, which is two lowercase e's, and heterozygous, which is a uppercase E and a lowercase e. Our next gene is agouti, which this is the gene that causes the most problems I have seen. Because agouti has three different alleles that it can have. It has a capital A as its most dominant allele. It has an A subscript T as its medium allele, and it has a lowercase a as its recessive allele. So this means that the possible outcomes for this gene is homozygous dominant, which is two uppercase A's, homozygous recessive, which is two lowercase a's, but then we also have a middle point of homozygous, where we have two of the medium point gene alleles. So this allele is the AT. Alleles will always be ordered in their dominance. A is recessive over both AT and lowercase a, and AT is dominant over lowercase a. So we can have capital AA, lowercase aa, AT, capital A, lowercase a, capital A, AT, and AT, lowercase a. So in this case, there is 6 different possible outcomes for these alleles. Our next gene is cream, and its two alleles are CCR, which is the dominant, and C. So the possible outcomes are CCR, CCR, CC, and CCRC. Our next gene is roan. and its possible alleles are capital RN, which is the dominant, and RN, which is the recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital RN, RN, and capital RN, lowercase rn. Thing to note on this gene here and this gene here, and I will several others along the way, is that the CR is going to always be lowercase, while the recessive gene here is uppercase. And in Roan, the N will always be lowercase in both the dominant and recessive. Putting an uppercase N in your dominant or your recessive will count towards an incorrect answer. Our next gene is done, and its alleles are capital D dominant, lowercase d recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital D, lowercase d, and capital D, lowercase d. Our next gene is Pearl. Its alleles are capital P, RL, dominant, and lowercase prl, recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital PRL, lowercase prl, and capital PRL, lowercase prl. This, again, is much like the Roan, where the RL will always be lowercase, and making it uppercase in your line will result in an incorrect answer. Moving on, our next gene is Silver. Silver is shown with Z's, so uppercase Z is dominant, and lowercase z is recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital Z, lowercase z, and uppercase Z, lowercase z. Our next gene is Champagne. Its alleles are capital CH and lowercase ch. So our possible outcomes are capital CH, lowercase ch, and capital CH, lowercase ch. Once again, the H will always remain lowercase. Putting an uppercase H will result in an incorrect answer. Our next gene is Gray. Its alleles are capital G dominant and lowercase g recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital G, lowercase g, and capital G, lowercase g. Our next gene is White, and here is something that also confuses some people. While I haven't run into this situation myself, so I'm not exactly sure what will happen, I do believe that you will still include it. So our two alleles for White are capital W dominant and lowercase w recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital W, lowercase w, or capital W, lowercase w. Now here's where some of this confusion sets in. Horses that are born with two uppercase W's will die immediately. They are not viable foals. And this is a thing implemented into the game. However, what I believe, and I haven't run into it myself, so I'm not completely sure, but this is a game of where you're finding all of the possible combinations. And whether it's viable or not, it is still a possible combination in some points. So, I will include it. But you will see along the way that we will find that the number of words at the bottom of our document should be equal to that we receive as our possible genetic combinations. So, if we do get a case where we're doing non-viable genes, and our final number is higher than that of the possible genetic combinations that we have received at the beginning, then we will know that you're not supposed to include them. Moving on, our next gene is Tobiano. Its alleles are capital TO, dominant, and lowercase to recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital To, lowercase to, and capital To, lowercase to. Much like before, the O will always be lowercase. Next, we have splash white. Its alleles are capital SPL, dominant, and lowercase spl, recessive. Our possible outcomes are capital SPL, lowercase spl, and uppercase SPL, lowercase spl. Our next gene is Sabiano. Its alleles are capital SB, dominant, and lowercase sb, recessive. Our possible outcomes are capital SB, lowercase sb, and capital SB, lowercase sb. Our next gene is Rabicano. Its alleles are capital RB, dominant, lowercase rb, recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital RB, lowercase rb, and capital RB, lowercase rb. Our next gene is Frame. Its alleles are capital O, dominant, lowercase o, recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital O, lowercase o, and uppercase O, lowercase o. Now we're almost near the end. Our next gene is Leopard complex. Its alleles are capital LP, dominant, and lower LP, recessive. So our possible outcomes are capital LP, lowercase LP, and uppercase LP, lowercase LP. Our next gene is pattern 1, which is shown by PATN1. Our alleles are capital PATN1, dominant, and lowercase PATN1, recessive. Now here's where this differs from other genes, because in the two pattern genes, you will capitalize all of the letters, where in our other genes, you would only capitalize the first letter of the allele. So our possible outcomes are capital PATN1, capital PATN1, lowercase PATN1, lowercase PATN1, and uppercase PATN1, lowercase PATN1. And it is the same for pattern 2, just with 2 instead of the 1. Some important things to note is brindle is not a gene. Brindle is shown with the X at the bottom. It will either be an X negative or an X plus if it is a brindled horse. But this is not a gene that you include in the genetics game. Including it will count as an incorrect answer. Alleles order in dominance. So the dominant allele will always come first when writing the gene. As I stated earlier, in the case of agouti with 3 possible alleles, capital A will always come before either AT or lowercase a, and AT will always come before lowercase a. Watch your capitalization. One wrong case in that line, and that entire line is incorrect. And this is where I just explained that homozygous is the term used for when both alleles are the same. Homozygous dominant is where both alleles are the dominant allele, such as capital E, capital E. Homozygous recessive is where both alleles are the recessive allele, such as lowercase e, lowercase e. And heterozygous is where one allele is the dominant and one allele is the recessive, such as uppercase E, lowercase e. Now that we've gone over all of the genes and their possible alleles, it is time to go through and do the live section of this tutorial. So, as I said, here we have our 2 parents, and what I like to do is open up a Word document because they're much easier to use than the website itself. And the website times out after 20 minutes. So if you're not quick enough, you could lose all of your progress. So what I like to do is take my screen, and there we go. I'm able to see all of the genes, and as I said, this pair has 576 possibilities. And the main reason behind that, as I can already tell, is both parents have different sets. They're both heterozygous in the agouti gene, which means they have 4 possibilities, and I have a Punnett square that I can show for that specific one. So what I like to do is take a Word document, and first and foremost, get this as a base. Now I will go through and make the changes. So going through our base, we will either put in one of the possibilities for each of the gene or the only possibility that the gene has. So for extension, we have heterozygous and homozygous recessive. So we can either put in heterozygous or homozygous recessive here, because those are the 2 possibilities that these parents can throw, because the sire can either throw a capital E or a lowercase e, but the dam can only throw a lowercase e. So I usually like to start with the homozygous recessive in the base if we can. So our next gene is the agouti. Now here we are only putting one of each possibility here. So I usually, again, will choose the homozygous recessive, and that is a possibility we have. For the cream, we have heterozygous and homozygous recessive. So our possibilities are heterozygous and homozygous recessive. So I will be starting with the homozygous recessive. Roan, we only have one possibility, and that's the homozygous recessive, which we already have in here, luckily. Dun, we only have one possibility, and that's the homozygous recessive, which is already in here. Pearl, we have 2 heterozygous, so here we have 3 possibilities. I will start with the homozygous recessive. For silver, we only have the possibility of homozygous recessive, because that is what both the parents are, and that is what our base gene has. For champagne, we only have the option for homozygous recessive, because that's what the parents have, so we will change this to that so that it fits. The same happens with gray, white, and Tobiano, which the base already has. Splash white, we have heterozygous and homozygous recessive. So we will start with double recessive, so homozygous recessive. For Sebbiano, we only have the option of homozygous recessive, so we need to change this to be as such. The same thing is for Rabicano, so change this as such. Frame, we have 2 possibilities because we have a heterozygous and a homozygous recessive, so we will leave it as the homozygous recessive for now. For our leopard complex, we only have the possibility for homozygous recessive, so we will leave it as such. For pattern 1, we only have the option for homozygous recessive, so we need to change this to be as such. And for pattern 2, we have 2 heterozygous. So we will have 3 possibilities here. But for now, we will start with homozygous recessive. So here is our base gene. This gene right here has all of our genes that will be set in stone. And it also has all of the genes that we will be changing. So to start off with, we will look for our first gene in these that changes. And it just so happens that our first gene, extension, has 2 possibilities. So what we will be doing is we will be copying this, which is our base, going 2 lines down, and pasting it. I just do a line in between so it's easy to separate what I need to change from what I already have set in stone. This is so that I don't accidentally make changes to the set genes that I already have. So we will take this and do the possibility in the first gene. So now we have set in stone and set in stone with the changes to the first gene. Now for the second gene, this is where it gets difficult. This is agouti, which agouti in this case has 4 possibilities. And I go over these possibilities in my earlier guide with a Punnett square that I have made. This is showing the 2 genes, the 2 alleles that our dam has, and our 2 alleles that our sire has, and the 4 possibilities that they can throw. So, our possibilities are 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, we already have this one covered in our previous 2 genes. So what we have to do is copy and paste enough to cover the rest of the possibilities. So there's the second possibility, our third possibility, and our fourth possibility. And now we can make the changes as such. So another possibility we can have is heterozygous AA and heterozygous AA. Our third possibility is capital A T. You gotta watch the capitals there. Make sure it is in the right case. The T will always be lowercase. And same thing here. AAT. And now our last possibility right here. ATA. And do the same on this one. And now we have lines of each possibility for our first and second genes. So we can now put this all together in one line because this will be our base for our next gene. Looking on, our next gene is the cream. And right now we have it in the recessive position. So we need to make another one for our second possibility of this gene. There we go. And our second possibility for this gene is with the CR in between the C and the C. So CR, 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 CR. And there's the step for our third gene. So you can put that together because that'll be our base for our next one. Now, as we discussed, our roan and our dun only have one possibility. So we don't need to do anything for those. But our next gene, pearl, has 3 possibilities we can do. We already have 1 possibility in this set as the homozygous recessive. So we need to make 2 more copies for our 2 other possibilities, which will be double dominant. I'll skip this and go through. Okay, so I've gone ahead and changed the second set to having homozygous dominant as its Pearl gene, and the third set having heterozygous, which covers our 3 possibilities. So once again, we can put these together, and this again will be the base for our next gene. And right now we're already up to 48 lines. So this right now is 48 different combinations. Our next gene is, we just did Pearl. So our next gene is Silver. Silver will not change. Same with Champagne, Gray, White, and Tobiano. Splash White, we have the possibility for homozygous recessive and heterozygous. So we already have homozygous recessive as our gene in our first set. So we will copy and paste, and we will go through and change all of the whites, the splash whites in this set to be our other possibility. Okay, I have now gone through and changed all of the splash white genes in this set to be the second possibility. So we can get rid of the spacing, and this will become our base for the next gene. As you can probably tell from this point, the farther along we go, the more we are copying and pasting. If the gene that we're doing has 2 possibilities, the amount of lines we will have will double. If it has 3 possibilities, it'll triple. And if it has 4 possibilities, i.e. agouti, it will quadruple. So it is a very tedious project, and we've already gotten ourselves up to 96 words, which means for our next gene, we will be copying and pasting another 96 lines and changing the gene in that for 96 lines. So our next gene that we have, we will copy all of this. As you can see, we're getting quite far into our document. We will paste. So I will find the spacing. There we go, that's the break. And our next gene, Sabbiano and Rabicano, do not change. So our next gene will be Frame. We already have the homozygous recessive as our gene in the first set. So for the second set, we will be doing the heterozygous version. Okay, so once again, I have gone through and I have turned all of the Frame genes in this set to the second possibility. As you can already see, we're getting very, very tedious as we are up to 192 already. And here is where we're going to get the 576. We already have 192, which is very well enough to get the total prize possible, as it will only count the first 100 lines. But I want to show you the full possibilities, so I'm going to be going in to all 576. So what we need to do is we need to copy. Our leopard complex will stay the same. Our pattern 1 will stay the same. And we have 2 heterozygous pattern 2s. So we need to actually paste this twice. And there we go. We now have 576 words. While the last ones are not changed yet, we do know that we have the right amount of lines. So, and that means we have a good chance of being completely correct in this case scenario. So what you're going to do now is change the genes to be the proper ones. I just need to make my way back up to the top. Then we can find the first break of the genes where we can do the dominant homozygous, and then we'll do the heterohomozygous. So I believe this is the beginning of the first one. Yeah, okay. So a good cheat that I'm going to say for the pattern ones is you can use control and this right here. So what I do is double click the pattern part and it'll select it. Now if you hold control, you can select different things. So you can go down your list selecting everything you need to select. So in this case, all of the patterns for this set, we will be selecting both the first and second allele in this case. And then when we get down to the second set, or technically the third, we will switch to only be clicking the first pattern in the first allele in the gene. This is where it's less tedious. In some cases, it can still seem tedious because you are still clicking and clicking and clicking and going through a lot of lines, and it can be painful on the eyes at some points, staring at the screen with the same black letters running over and over and over again. And this is why the majority of the time that I do this is when I'm completely bored and I don't mind giving myself something to occupy myself with, no matter how bland it may be. So you're just going to continue going through and selecting all of the genes. The reason I'm not cutting this is because I'm afraid that when I let go to go and cut this, I'm going to lose everything by clicking off. But I probably won't, so it's probably just not worth it. But I want to show this guide in depth, so this I'm fine with. I actually haven't done one this long yet. I have to say 576 is definitely my longest one. I think prior to this, my longest one was probably 300-ish. I do try and get on and do them every day, so I have seen quite an assortment of genes already, and I do this generally every day. I will say generally every day, either as soon as I get home from school or while I'm at school, because I have a spare and then lunch, and I tend to spend my spare in the library, and when I'm on my library computers, I'm most likely on this website, and that's when I'm the most active on this website, I'd say, because while I'm at home, I'm most likely gaming rather than on websites, like I'll play Paladins with my friends. So yeah, now I feel like I'm rambling, so I probably should have paused this, but, you know. If anything, I can edit and cut it out later. So, the thing that what I'm doing right now is saving you from doing is having to go in and erase and type. You just have to make sure that you're clicking the right ones so that you're not like clicking the last one of the ones and that you're staying in the right gene, because with this, things do occasionally blur together when you're looking at them for a very long time. How many am I at? 247. Okay. Wait. Okay, there it is. I thought I might have already gone past the gap. I was about to say. Okay, you know what? I am going to cut this. So sadly, as I thought, me clicking to exit, to pause my recording did in fact get rid of all of the select. So I did have to go back through and do it again, but here you can see all of the stuff that I had selected and changed. So we have our set of one possibility, and then our set of the next possibility. And in this case, that's our last gene. Well, that's the last gene of all of them, but in this case, our last gene is our last gene. So we are done. And now we can post this into our submit box. So we just need to get rid of the spaces that are in between, because those enters, those spaces, will count as a guess and will actually be an incorrect guess because there's no gene in it. So you do definitely want to get rid of those. You want to watch your capitals, you want to watch your spacing. You just need to watch out for a lot of things. But here we have 576 words. They're words because there's no spaces. You're not supposed to put spaces in between the commas. So it's counting the words as each line. So we do have the same amount here, so that's a good check. So I'll show you how to post it in here without getting it wrong. Of course, at this point, it's been way over 20 minutes. In fact, I took a break and ate dinner in between making this, so it's been a couple of hours. So you're going to have to refresh your page. And games, genetics. So we have here. So I'll show you both ways you could post it. The first way you could post it would be to just take the first 100 lines. Whoops. A huge thing to notice, a huge thing when doing the pattern things that I was showing you. You need to hold control that entire time. If you click without holding control, you will lose your progress. So now we need to select 100 lines, because that's all it will take. So you only really need to do this up until the first 100 lines, and then you can stop. You don't need to go as far as I did, but I want to show you something later on. I'm not actually going to hit enter when I put these 100 in. I just want to show you what happens when you put the first 100 in. So I'm going to paste. And as you see here, there's the enter, the line for where my text is a line under where mine ends. That'll mean that it'll count this line as a guess, and that'll be incorrect. So you have to hit backspace. But you have to be careful when you hit backspace, because occasionally you can hit that 2 and accidentally get rid of it. So, whoa, did not mean to do that. Is that the top? Okay. Yeah, got rid of that. So I'm going to select everything. Oops. I'm just going to do it this way. I'm just going to click the top, hit Shift and the down key, and select everything. Wow, this is 20 pages of genes. That was a lot. I did not realize it was that much. This is definitely the longest I've ever done it. Okay, so I should have, yeah, 576 out of 576. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it. Now the huge thing about this is now that you've done this, do not hit the backspace. If you hit the backspace, I'll show you, it'll take you to the middle of the 100th line. So that one will be counted as incorrect. So what we're going to want to do here is, I'm just reselecting it so I can paste all 576 again. So we're going to do paste and submit. Oh, it looks like it did it anyways. It looks like it cut off. Yeah, it cut off one. So occasionally it'll not work. But nonetheless, all of the guesses that I put in were correct. It just didn't count this one. It got cut off here. So you need to be careful of that. Total number of guesses, 100. Number of correct guesses, 99. Number of incorrect guesses, obviously because it cut off, is 1. So you have to be careful of that. You can get rid of this text document now. You don't need to save it unless you want to for some reason. But, yeah. Just got myself 4,950 EBS. So I will be posting this on my guide right here. And I hope that you all enjoyed and learned from this. Thank you so much.